every country has a different tax regulation, different legal law, and it's so important to understand.
Ikea, when they decided to open up the shop in India, the way they kind of fostered the partnerships, the end-to-end thought process, I think that's a great example.
What is big in India is not necessarily big, right? Like Diwali is big here, but Friday is super big for us in the US, right?
What are some of the misconceptions that teams or people have when they think that, their product is ready for global market?
This is such a common misconception I have seen.
So fundamentally, basically nothing changes. AI or not AI, I think we just need to go back to who is your customer, ask the right questions.
You already have simple solutions that are there, which are not so expensive.
HSB, Harishankar Singhania School of Business, the new global technology-focused business school located in Jaipur.
Welcome to this episode of Product Talk with Malti. Today, my guest, Deeksha Anand, is the Product Marketing Manager for Google Play Points across US. Now, interestingly, she's somebody who started as a chartered accountant and now is into the product marketing role. So she comes with a very amazing blend of this analytical rigor as well as creative storytelling. And this also shines up in her YouTube, which is called as Behind the Feature, where she basically breaks down a lot of successful apps, their features in a case study format. And this is the same approach she even took today in our discussions, where we talk about how do you make global products local and how do you take local products to global, where we go through a variety of examples and case studies. So what did we really talk about today? We first of all talked about what is the difference between a product marketing manager and a product manager and how do they work together. We speak about a variety of examples where organizations have taken their global products to local, what were some of the strategies that they applied. We spoke about localization to globalization. What does it take for a product to go into a new market? Well, when we talk about marketing and products, it's not possible that we don't talk about AI. So we talk about a bunch of different things. That what does it take for AI to make the changes in the marketing day-to-day work? How has it impacted the GTM strategy? So do check it out. Hi Deeksha, welcome. Finally, good afternoon.
Hey, Maldi, long time. We've been chatting. I'm so glad to finally be on your podcast.
Yeah, and thank you. I know that you've had a very hectic day, so I'm really looking forward for this conversation. Maybe this is a good break for you.
Yes, me too. Let's jump in.
Yes. So, Deeksha, I'm going to start with the current role that you're playing, right? The product marketing manager. Now, especially you know that I kind of teach across corporates, I teach across academia, and there is definitely some kind of a elusiveness which is there about this role, right? Where people are constantly understand, okay, can you tell us what is the difference between a product marketing manager and a product manager? So why don't we start at that note?
Okay, you know what? If I have to just define it very simply, I would say it's like the product manager is like the architect of the product. They define what to build and why it should be built. And the product marketing manager is the storyteller of the product, right? They define how to talk about it and finally who to talk to about it. So, in a lot of companies, if they're small scales or mid-size, it's usually the product manager who also plays the role of a product marketing manager. And that's the reason there is a lot of confusion saying why is there. But when we come to companies at the scale of the FANGs, the Googles of the world, there is a division in terms of, the person who's actually defining what to build and why it should be built versus the person who actually takes it to market and launches the product.
Got it, got it. And what does it take, Deeksha, to become a product marketing manager? What are the kind of skills that company look for?
So, the one thing that I will say about this role is, I've also spoken to PMMs working in other companies. The JD of this role can actually vary so vastly that sometimes it can be a core consumer marketing kind of a role, where you actually end up doing things like brand marketing and offline marketing. But in my case in particular, and I want to talk about that, it's a hardcore product role. So I actually roll up into the product org at Google. And the skill set, when they did hire me, I was heading product for Aditya Birla Health Insurance, their app and website. So I had a flavor of the product background, and that's what helped me. I actually had no marketing background or gaming background, which was one of the prerequisites for the role. But at the end of the day, this role, because you sit in between product, sales, legal, and so many different orgs, your ability to one, be a great communicator, and to be a good storyteller matters. And the second thing that definitely matters is stakeholder management, and that was one transferable skill that you can carry no matter which role you worked in.
Yeah, I think that sounds very familiar. And again, there's just so much of overlap between product marketing and product that probably this is one function which you will see people coming from very diverse background. As you yourself said, you're somebody who has never worked on marketing, and now here you are in the thick of things doing product marketing. So yeah, I think it's also about if you have the intent and if there are those transferable skills which you can apply, I think you can succeed in any role.
I think definitely, Malti. I think that for me, that has been the mantra of my career. It's a challenge. I will put my hand up, and as long as you're game to learn, I don't think any role has this set JD or set skill sets, because to be a chartered accountant as the beginning of my career and to be here where what I'm doing 15 years later, I mean, there's been a huge transition in terms of the different skills. So I don't think I will say, hey, you have this fixed path saying, hey, you have to do an engineering degree or you have to do an MBA. That's the beauty of the roles. And especially with AI, the way we're actually going to be evolving. I personally believe in being more T-shaped professionals. And that is my own mantra, saying, hey, be an expert in one thing, but also have the capability to, kind of understand design when it comes to product, understand eng or product itself. And for me, personally, one of my T's, is data. And that's where I'm like, okay, I have a CA background. So how can I leverage one of those skill sets? So that's the way I would take it.
Yeah. Wow. That's a very very different set of functions that you have done. I by the way, just for this thing from an academic perspective, I studied botany. So
Oh,
from
wow. See? That's
yeah.
why when someone asks me, he's saying, hey, what were the skill sets? And I would be like, what the JD said and what I said was absolutely like my skill set wasn't, I don't think was identically there. But the question was whether you are able to fit yourself. And if someone gives you the opportunity, how well do you take that up?
Agreed. That's true. All right, that was a great starter, Deeksha. And I want to now double click on the topic that you and I were talking about, which is talking about that how does one take their product to a global market, and also the other way around. What does it take to look at a global product to take it to a new geography and give more local flavor to it, right? So let's start, and especially we are in the backyard of we are the land which is building global products sitting out of India, right? So why don't we start from there? That what are some of the misconceptions that teams or people have when they think that their product is ready for global markets?
You know, Madhi, this is such a common misconception I have seen, because also I'm a part of the Play Store. Uh, a lot of teams assume that if we've kind of the product works well in one market, and especially if that's your home market, it will work globally without much tweaks, right? It's like in some sense you're saying, hey, I'm trying to play cricket, but I'm trying to play with baseball rules, right? And oh, it is still a stadium or it's still a match, but you know what, you'll just get out fast if you do not know the local game. So I'll give you a couple of myths that I have seen. The first one in my head is localization is not equal to translation, right? I think that for me, and I don't know how many times like you have to, just because you've localized your app or your website in a particular in the local language does not mean you've actually localized it. What actual local market fit goes is way deeper. Do you understand the payment preferences? Do you understand the behavior, for example, between cash versus a UPI versus cards in the West, right? Across the world, there's some very different nuances. Um, the design patterns, whenever we do banners, we actually realize in certain countries there's a left alignment versus there's a right alignment. And these will be nuances that do not come naturally, but this makes a huge difference. The buying behavior in some markets, naturally there's a subversion to subscriptions versus in some markets they have been open. So for me, that's the first myth that I feel like people get wrong. The second one that I would definitely say is you kind of also, I've seen people ignoring the distribution differences that are there. You feel like you've nailed performance marketing in India. Uh, but how do you win in a market like Germany where privacy is more important, right? And I had one of my ex classmates actually mention this story with how Expedia, was trying to enter, taking exactly the kind of model they have in India, maybe to Germany. And we think it will work. And you immediately ask a person for your mobile number and their OTP because it's so natural in India, right? But that's actually not at all the way a login or a sign up journey works in a country because people aren't comfortable giving you their phone numbers so easily, right?
Right.
Think about the platform regulations. We have so many GDPR things. And this is when we work at scale. I've done a global role last year and I'm doing an US role this year. Every country has a different tax regulation, different legal law. And it's so important to understand whether your product's actually ready before you think, hey, I'm just going to switch it on the Play Store or the App Store and I'm going. And seasonality and timing. What is big in India is not necessarily big, right? Like Diwali is big here, but Friday is super big for us in the US, right? So how do you create these kind of differentiation? And the third and the most common that I have seen is the pricing parity, right? We see a lot of gaming developers, the game that they've launched in the US, they actually try to get it to India. And you're thinking, hey, a $7 pricing in US, which is equal to, hey, we can like price it at 500. But there is a huge buying power. How you actually, it varies widely. And do you actually take that into account? As well as the value perception, right? Um, in India, we think something that's cheaper. It's not actually cheap. We do not see that. We see it as value for money, but in certain markets, that might not be the case because they would actually think this is not necessarily a great product. So I think in a nutshell, like your product might be global, but you need to understand that your users are local. And if you don't respect that, they'll just swipe left, no matter how good your tech is.
No, very, very well put points, Deeksha. I think some of the couple of examples which kind of stands out for me, for example, I've personally seen how IKEA, when they decided to open up the shop in India, the length to which they went to understand, because we are not, for example, a do-it-yourself market, we are a do-it-for-me
Yes.
market, right? The way they kind of foster the partnerships, the end-to-end thought process, I think that's a great example. And I think though it's a long time back. But when Uber for the first time came in India, I think cash for the first time that they were dealing with when I think
Hmm.
they came to Southeast Asia, right? So understanding the nuances much deeper. And the second point, which you spoke about, the value perception. I don't think, especially as a product manager, it is very important to get, because very recently in a conversation, I remember there is this lady who's based out of US, and she said, you know what, it is so expensive in US because I have to buy it for $20, and the same thing is available for 700 rupees in India, right? I said, don't look at, because you are looking at it just a direct dollar to INR
Yes.
conversion. It is probably from a value perspective pretty much the same thing, right? But
Right.
you as a product manager need to wear that hat to see, understand users' value perception.
No, and I think definitely, Mati, this is where we as PMMs come in, right? So when we do take global products, and when I launched Playpoints in India, that was a very big part of my role saying, can a one, like in the US, if a $1 gives you 1 point, I can't have the same saying, hey, just convert it and say, hey. So we actually localized it to saying, hey, if you spend 5 rupees, that's
Yeah.
when you get 1 point. And that's the skill. When you do ask me, what is it a PMM does? These are the local nuances that a PMM brings to the role and to the table.
Awesome, amazing. So now, since Diksha, you are somebody who's kind of working on global markets and all that, what would be some of the things that you would suggest or one should keep in mind when you are trying to understand what should be your next market? Should I go to Latin America? Should I go to China? How should one decide which market to go for? Once, let's say,
Uh,
you're proven in one geography, probably.
I think here one of the biggest fallacies that I have seen is most founders chase the big TAM markets. Um, and one of
Hmm.
my own personal favorite examples for this is Rapido, right? Um, they didn't go after the massive car hailing market. They actually realized there's an underserved bike taxi, right? There was a niche that they found. Or I'll give you another example, and I spoke about this yesterday on LinkedIn, is Pocket FM, right? Uh, they did not compete with Spotify's music market. So they kind of created the whole audio storytelling category. And for me, in my head, I will divide this into like a three-layer framework that people should think about. The first one is problem market fit. And I'm not going to be like giving you something like, hey, you should go to LATAM and then, this is an order. I mean, that's not how it should work. When you are thinking about your product, the first thing that you need to ask yourself is, hey, is there a genuine daily pain point that we're solving for in that? Like, is there a problem? Um, are there current solutions that are missing? Something that's fundamental? And
Hmm.
finally, can you solve something that's 10x better and not 10% better, right? There is a difference between 10x and 10%. Um, Once you clear that layer, your next question to yourself should be, what is your unfair advantage? Do you have any insight that others don't? Or can you access the market in some way that the competitors can't access it? Or I don't know, do you understand any cultural or behavioral nuances that someone else might not be able to? And finally, the third question that you should ask yourself is the economic viability, right? Will people pay for this? Can you build a sustainable unit economics? And is there a path to profitability and not just growth, right? At the end of the day. So you need a problem, then you need to be uniquely positioned to solve it. And finally, it has to be commercially viable. These are the things I would say. Having said this, I will say that there are certain red flags that people should think about when they're entering a market and they should avoid. The first one is if you have to spend a lot of time educating customers extensively.
Hmm.
Um, and this is a mistake that, we have seen happen so often. And one of the ones that comes to my mind immediately is the whole Kellogg's cereal example, right? Um, Kellogg's decided to enter India, and it's been a while that they came with the breakfast cereal, but you're coming to a country where there's 5,000 years of warm breakfast culture. Um, I know that I go to the US and I go and stand in the breakfast and I'm like, okay, there's cold milk and there's cereal and I'm just standing and I'm just wondering what to do, right? Like it's so not natural for us. That's the first. The second is the whole value evaluation, right? Will you pay 150 rupees for a cereal box versus, we have 20 rupees ka poha ingredients that you can have. And in our parents' mind, I don't think for a mom, if she just puts like a cereal and milk, like in her head, she's actually nutritionally feeling like it kind of feels guilty also. And finally, like Indian breakfast is so much of like it's not sweet crunch, it's spices. We love variety. We love something that's fresh. I'm like, where's my parathas or those kind of things, right? And this struggle that Kellogg's has faced, it's very real, right?
Right.
Um, they've been trying to spend decades trying to crack this market. They've been also launching localized flavors, emphasizing health benefits, targeting working mothers. So that is what they're trying to do. But my biggest learning here will be is you can't change culture. You can only work within it or find the people who themselves want to change it. So
Hmm.
that's why I would say that's the first red flag. If you really have to spend a lot of time educating people about your solution, that's something that you should avoid. The second is if you are the 47th player entering the market with the same solution. You know how many people tried even in India after Ola, Ubers, there was so many taxi for sure and so many. So it's the reason that Rapido worked was because they found like a niche, right? They knew somebody was not. So that's fine to be another player, but you have to have a differentiation or an angle that somebody else doesn't. And it should not be a market where you can easily be ousted on if someone can overspend on you, right? Like we had the Grab and the Uber example that you actually, the whole Southeast Asia example, and that did end up happening even for a player at the scale of Uber. So, yeah, I mean, I think these would be some of the red flags I would also say when you're entering a market.
Yeah, no, I think those are some brilliant examples that you spoke about. And I agree that while I remember because I take this example of Kellogg's in my class, and I think the mission with which they came was that they will change the way Indians have their breakfast. But it is something very deeply rooted in our culture, right? It's not so
Yeah,
easy to change. I mean, while I would say the younger generation is probably slightly a little mixed bag than my generation or my parents' generation, but yes, it is still very deeply rooted, right?
true.
Isha, I have probably like a follow up question in the other way around. While I am a product owner and I'm trying to enter into a new market, those are a great set of things that you said, right? But it also happens where when I'm doing my user research, market research, I do see those demand signals and all that, based on which I decide, okay, probably this is the market that I should go after. But any examples, any this thing that you can recollect, where they still failed to make an impact or failed miserably in a market where they still saw the demand signals?
So I have a couple of examples closer to home, but I mean, I won't be talking about them for obvious reasons in my own experience where we've seen certain failures.
Uh-huh.
But the one that I would mention is the one that you actually started with, is the whole Uber and Southeast Asia example, right? When you think about Uber entering Indonesia or the Vietnam markets, they actually had the right demand signals, right? They had massive growing urban populations, they had low car ownership, there was a smartphone penetration, and people
Right.
wanted convenience, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it was ticking all the right boxes, saying, "Hey, there is a demand signal. So why is it that it did not work?" Uh, and some of the things that people tend to overlook, right? Again, the whole culture nuances that I started with is first, when you're entering a market, have you realized what is the paying like in the Southeast Asia world? Cash is actually big, unlike in India where we are more UPI driven. And Uber initially kind of only pushed their credit card. In India, Ola actually had launched cash, by the way, before Uber, and then Uber kind of realized that they should. Um, and that's a nuance that Grab immediately understood because they did come from that market. And from day one, they started building cash payment options within their app. And this kind of led them to lead to immediate adoption. The second is, again, that culture has more motorbike taxis, and Uber kind of tends to play into the whole hey cab ride hailing, and they'll give you different options in X premium and black and everything. But in a market like Indonesia, Grab was actually offering diversified like options like a go bike or a taxi, where they were just partnering with existing fleets, and they understood that market where
Hmm.
Uber kind of missed it. And the third one is, I know in India we've not seen success, but if you go down to Singapore or Korea, or you have Kakao Talk in Korea, or in Indonesia, there's Gojek, right? And there's Grab, and these are kind of a super app. So people tend to go to the same app to order their food, to pay their
Hmm.
bills. And that was a nuance in the super app vision that Grab had actually gotten into. And finally, this kind of led with the Uber, like eventually exiting these markets and selling to their local competitors, which is Grab. And yeah, I mean, this has been one of those examples where if you miss the cultural nuance, things can definitely go wrong.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, I think, and you need to be at it, right? I mean, it's not that you have gotten a particular segment that you can kind of sit on the laurels. You have to continuously go out there, right? Diksha, you kind of in some of the previous answers or conversations, you touched upon a couple of things. And when as a product person you are getting started, right, especially as a product marketing, what is the first place you start? Is it more around positioning? Is it more around pricing? Is it more from user centricity of the product? Is there like a sequence that you follow, especially when you are thinking from your go to market strategy perspective?
So I will say this, there is no universal answer, and
Mm-hmm.
that there is typical dependencies on the situation. But having said that, there is a logical order that I personally follow. The first one is positioning, because the positioning provides you the why,
Hmm.
followed by product, which provides the what, and then pricing, which provides how much, right? And I'll go into each of these into detail. Why is it that I chose positioning first? So before, even if you can think about the product or pricing, you must first deeply understand the new market. Again, from all the examples that we have spoken about, right? Um, the first thing that we do is we do deep market research. We understand the local needs, the pain points, the cultural norms, the regulatory environments. Second is, you kind of understand the target audience, right? Who is it that I'm talking to in that market? Because markets can be very big. Um, what is the value proposition that I'm getting to this market, and how do I want to speak to them? Who are my competitors in my market? When I was launching Playpoints in India, there were lots of loyalty programs already existing in India, right? And it's not like you can cut, copy, paste a US program and bring it to India. It demanded me to actually go down deep, do consumer research, competition research. I mean, understanding culture for me was easy because I did belong to this market. Um, and then finally, without clear positioning, you don't know what product features will resonate, right? And how to price them is later, right? So positioning becomes the absolute first. If the core message about what your product is and why it matters doesn't connect, no amount, and I'm saying this, no amount of product features or perfect pricing will save the product. And once you understand the how you want to be perceived and what problem you're solving for, it then becomes really easy, I think, much easier to adapt your product. And I can talk about one of my favorite examples here is Netflix. Initially, right, when they launched in India, they said, hey, we want to be the premium Hollywood place where you can get access to. But they went back in 2019 and they said, hey, we do not want to play the niche game. We want to be there for the masses. So they reworked in their positioning. And that's when you can see the product adaptation that they ended up doing. They built a mobile only plan, which does not exist in any other market, right? And then followed the pricing, right? The pricing that they created for India, which was 199 rupees mobile only plans. And getting that sense, what is it that they want to build comes in once you're clear with what the positioning is. Um, a part of the product, then it becomes easier for us, right? When we realized we want to launch, we said, okay, what are the localization, the features that we want to adopt beyond languages? Like I said, what are the payment options? So in India, we actually give UPI, which was not necessarily there in any of our other markets. The local laws, the regulatory laws, the taxes, all of that comes into the product piece. And finally, pricing. I think once you understand what the competitors are, what is the perceived value, what is your positioning, it becomes kind of easy to do a cost analysis and the value based pricing that you want to set for your product. So that's my order. Having said this, there are places where this order might shift. Um, for example, if you have a highly commoditized product like electronics, raw materials, in that case, price has to be like a differentiator that you should talk about. If it's a regulatory driven entry, right? In that, again, there it ends up becoming more product first, then, positioning, pricing. Um, and finally, if you have a strong universal brand, which is something like Coke or Apple, then you do not adopt pricing or product, which are exceptions that I will say. And that's why I said you cannot have like a one size fits all. But yeah, this would be the order I would recommend.
Yeah, no, I think you said it beautifully. And I'm actually going to harp a little bit deeper on one thing, one question. See, right now, with this whole AI boom that we have, I feel that there are a lot of products which seem to be like the hammer looking for a nail. Right? I actually recently ended up talking to a couple of startups where they said, you know what, we do this really well. We do this really well. I was trying to understand, okay, but what is the problem that you're solving? So he said, we are actually struggling with that because when we go to our prospective customers, it takes us half an hour to explain that what is our product and to understand, how, we could be like that key which could solve their problem, right? So have you seen, any such examples, or do you think from this positioning perspective, is there some different approach or aspect that AI products needs to consider?
Malti, I was also speaking to an AI founder, and he's giving me a demo of his product. And I'm like, but who are you solving for? What are you exactly solving? And that's the fact. When AI came, this is one of my favorite lines, and one of my friends said it. He said, when AI came, everyone threw the best thing that could happen was everyone threw out their roadmaps. But when AI came, the worst thing that happened was everyone threw out their roadmaps and just started building and
Correct.
putting AI for the sake of AI. And I will say that this fallacy does not only exist for companies that are now just being built with AI solutions, but a lot of features that a lot of big companies also are just force fitting, saying, hey, I want AI. I want to be able to say that maybe in my next quarterly review or something.
Correct.
And this is the fundamental, I don't think of PMM or product. It's just the fundamental of design thinking.
Hmm.
Always start with the problem first, right?
Hmm.
What is the problem that I'm trying to solve? And I think this is something that does not change and has not changed for the last 100 years, right? What is it that we're trying to solve? And then AI is one of the tools with which you solve it, but AI is not the solution of the problem. uh, and you can also have different ways to solve it. So for me, putting the problem first and that consumer lens is the first thing that you should definitely keep in mind.
Correct. So fundamentally, basically, nothing changes. AI or not AI, I think we just need to go back to who is your customer, ask the right questions.
Yeah, I mean, think about it, right? In some cases, you're trying to, kill an ant with a bazooka.
Hmm.
That's exactly what this is. You already have simple solutions that are there, which are not so expensive. But you said, "Hey, I want to get an AI, and then I want to solve it."
I agree. I agree. And Diksha, I mean, since you kind of spoke about that, right? I think in the last 3 years, I have seen that marketing, product marketing is one of the most talked about use cases or leveraging AI, Gen AI capabilities, right? Have you in your day job really seen some high ROI use cases where AI slash Gen AI has solved for you guys?
One of my other examples, and I wouldn't say this is Gen AI, but this is how, I've spoken about this, is the whole Netflix thumbnail strategy, right? Um, if you realize every time you see Netflix, and if you have yours and you have your partner's Netflix, they're actually different for the same movie. The thumbnails are actually different. And
Okay.
each of these thumbnails that they have, they've done a massive A/B testing, not on 16 variations or anything. It's on thousands of variation, depending on what you like. So for someone like me, who is a more rom-com junkie, I get to see a lot more of my favorite characters or like emotional scenes versus my husband's, which is more, he's more into action. So they actually put the same movie will have an extremely different thumbnail because we make our decision in the first 2 seconds. And
Hmm.
that's what like Netflix studied, right? They actually did an experiment. I think with one of their Stranger Things. Yes, they did it with Stranger Things, and they kind of used different thumbnails for different audiences, and they saw there was a massive difference in even just the person clicking, right? So the first click that a person is doing, even that is getting personalized. So that is one of the most common ones. The other one that we're seeing a lot of uh, uptake internally is Google's launch VO, right, which is our video generation platform. And how instead of you now having to sit like in marketing and getting ads shot for days together, writing copywriting, having huge teams, um, and you want to do small changes that end up costing so much time. Now with the help of AI, you can actually create videos. So in my opinion, like the video piece, and it's still at the nascent stages, but
Right.
there is a possibility for it to scale so much more in marketing. um, and they will not only have, like, today we all see the same ad, right? I believe in the next few years, each of us are actually going to get a different ad for the same product, because we can now create videos at scale with the help of AI, and you do not need to spend hours and also the money, right?
Yeah, no, I think those are some great examples. And so, what I hear is that there is definitely a huge increase in the velocity, right? We are able to do much more in the same time, and hyper personalization is where we are all headed to, right? More and more contextual to the person, to the user is where we are headed to, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. And one of the other areas, right, where we and this is something which I have also seen. I mean, there are a bunch of tools out there. Is that how do you kind of get a better handle of your customer insights, right? Because we all
Hmm.
are just sitting on so much of data, right? So translating, distilling down your customer behavior, usage, and all that, and getting that into insights. So is that also something, have you do you believe that the tools have been able to do an extremely great job in kind of distilling the insights, or do you still think there is a huge amount of human empathy which has a role to play there?
So the one thing that we see with AI is it doesn't feel emotions. But the good thing that it can is it can understand patterns really, really well. Let me take a music app example, right? AI can definitely tell like people are skipping songs. It can see that there is a drop off in the engagement after 2 weeks. The other thing that it can definitely now start to do really well, which I can see, is it can actually tell you who's going to churn out,
Hmm.
which is great. But it will not be able to tell you is the reason that someone skipped it. Was it because it was a bad mood? Was it actually a boring song? Was it too predictable? Or was the person feeling overwhelmed, right? It cannot feel that experience, because and it does become robotic. And that I feel is where, whether it's a PMM or a PMM, that's when they come in, because that's where we got to come in and say, hey, what's missing here and how do we solve for it?
Hmm.
Um, so it can, and then we come up with the solutions that we would like to do. But the human element, at least as of now, it's not there yet. Having said that, um, if the AI is trained on extremely diverse and representative data sets, and it is guided, because at Google we are, there is a lot of work that is being done to train the models, and make them specially like good at, like, whether it's the health data, right, when we're trying to create solutions for cancer and everything. So if you have local domain experts, psychologists, um, we can move from the one size fits all personalization to something that is actually respectful and relatable. Uh, but there is still a journey that we have to take.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a. So I actually want to share this. This was I was in a panel discussion couple of weeks back, and we were all talking about the tools, AI tools that PM use and stuff like that. And in the chat, it was a virtual one. So in the chat, there was one person who very progressively said, "You know what? I'm at the same time attending two sessions. This particular tool is recording everything, taking summaries, and the other one, I'm kind of attending." So I think one thing which I really want to say is that we as humans are not designed for multitasking, because whenever we are as you said, the music app, the AI cannot tell you why did that person skip that song. Like, for example, when I'm talking to you, all my senses are kind of, attuned to what you're saying. I'm processing it, I'm internalizing it. And only because of that, even after 6 months, maybe, 3% or 4% of this conversation will be there with me, right? But when
Yes.
you are summarizing, you are not truly getting the essence of that conversation. You are not experiencing it. Your sense organs are not, delving into it. So somewhere I also feel that it is kind of eroding our cognitive ways of
Uh,
doing things.
yeah, I know, because when people talk to Grok, people are like, oh my God, we love it because it's so angry all the time. And I'm like, what? Like now you want someone to be angry while talking to you. But yeah, but that's the thing, right? People miss emotions when they talk to the agents, right? And that is the piece that will not, I don't think we will be there yet. But I might have to bite my own words maybe in a year or two.
Yeah, in fact I can feel the difference, right? I find Claude to be very very dispassionate, whereas I feel that chat gpt is always trying to please me with
Yeah,
all.
I
So
mean,
I'm
true.
really,
And yeah, I mean, and Grok is just angry. Like it's just like
maybe each one of
let
has their
us
own
their
persona.
own persona. Yeah, that is true. That is
Yeah, that's
definitely
true.
true.
And probably one last question towards this conversation, Deeksha. Have you also seen, like we spoke about how AI is being used, especially when we are talking about scaling up, globalization, localization? We kind of spoke about. One of the questions I have is that beyond personalization, are there other aspects where you have seen kind of AI helping with working, not working? Any thoughts around that?
I'll be very honest. Right now, the solutions that where people are implementing are still on the whole customer journeys, customer queries instead of talking. That's one area where I'm seeing a lot of big banks, big MNCs, financial services specifically implementing solution. For me, I think going forward, the differentiator that will be there when you are implementing Gen AI solutions is um, you have to have this personalization across the board, right? You can't
Mm.
just personalize the homepage, but not my emails, not my customer support, not my recommendations. So whenever we should speak about, there was a buzzword every few years. There's a one buzzword. So there was omni-channel ecosystem that was there back in the 2000s. And that's what it has to be, right? Your differentiator will not just be, hey, I'm personalizing it, but how across the board that
Yeah.
entire journey is. Like if you go to Disney, right? Like you have this one magic band, and then it can work across the resort, the restaurants, the theme park, and that's where it has to be. Um, the second piece that is there are companies that are using AI when they're writing their content, and but you should not lose your originality and your emotional, the nuance that we've just been speaking about, right? uh, Duolingo, even for me, comes out across as a great example. They have, even when Gen AI is helping them with their content, they have their quirky owl, green owl personality that comes in, and it will be even more important to have humans in that loop of creativity, and that's where it will be the differentiator as we go forward. How do we actually use AI to be even better, right?
Yeah.
Like to be even better. And finally, your proprietary data mode, right? It's right, Malti. Everyone is sitting on data, but what is the quality of data that we're all sitting on? And everybody has access to OpenAI, Gemini, Claude, but not everyone has access to deep proprietary user behavior data, maybe because they did not collect it. And also the fact that, do you have the necessary permissions to create that whole close feedback loop when you're training your models? Um, and this is why the Netflix example, right? When they created the thumbnail, they had millions of data point as to what was making you click versus what's making me click,
Hmm.
right? And that is where that behavior, that AI is now, their insight engine is so strong. So I think these, for me, these are where the game changers will start, where you will differentiate everyone. from the great.
Yeah, no, I think you kind of great points, and you kind of summed it up very well in terms of the customer journey. That is where it has to be very very consistent experience and as much contextual and personalized, right? That makes a lot of sense. Maybe I know there's just one more context that I want to have. We spoke a lot about what it takes to go to a new market, a local aspect of it. One question I have is around, if I have a product and there is always a local factor that I need to put in for a continent or for a country or for a the culture. But are there
Right.
any aspects of globalization also that are the guiding principles for the PMMs?
Definitely. So I like, why don't I share an example for like which I feel like I study myself, and is I can give you two. One
Mm-hmm.
which is like from globalization, a global brand that came into India, and that's Zoom. Oh, okay. Actually, you know what? Let me pick Spotify because we are
Okay.
going into content.
Sure.
So Spotify was existing everywhere. They said, hey, listen, let's come into India. So there was so much competition. There's YouTube Premium Music Free, there is Geo Savan. And even today, like Spotify has managed to get 26% of the market share in India. That's not a small feat in a market where people like free content. And
Correct.
Spotify in the US is a highly subscription driven model. That means it does not give you too much stuff for free if you've used it there. But when they decide to come to India, first thing they actually just flipped the whole thing and they said, hey, we are okay. We're going to create multiple touch points where entries for the users given this market. The first thing that they did a great job is they designed a micro pricing for India. And I'm not talking about 199 or 149. They actually did 7 days, like, rupees 7 per day, premium mini version, because they realized that people in India kind of prefer small, frequent payments. Um, they localize their entire product, and by this I mean, you do, like I said, right, it's not just about translation but also the marketing, the partnerships that you do. So they actually came in and they partnered with Fresh Finds, and they have Radar, and that alone, like they partnered the, I think the house that is the Malayalam music, right, like where they did that alone contributes to a huge growth for them. um, they also understood that it's absolutely okay to build something from scratch, but they had the deep pockets, and that's not necessarily easy. But they kind of created India's first digital audio advertising market, and they worked with 300 brands to kind of create it. Finally, payment, UPI, something that they never had, they had, and created that for India. And they invested in creating locally cultural things. So the two things that sell in India is mythology and spirituality. And 4 out of India's top 10 podcasts that they've invested are, in on these in this. So um, whenever you are going, or you're coming into a different, like you're going global, recognize that you have to adopt your business model before
Mm.
expecting people to adopt your product. Um, Indians have always been price sensitive, and reach will always come before revenue in our market. And that was something that they understood, and they did pretty well. Flipping this example now to a player, again, talk about Pocket FM. Seems like they're competitors, content, audio. Uh, but then how is it somebody has got people to pay 1,000 crore, like they have a revenue of 1,000 crores now,
Wow. Okay.
by paying for audio content, right? Um, and the thing is, 70% of their market share comes from outside India. Having said that, so they decided where we're going to build content before we actually build the revenue. So they created that entire library of like 75,000 across genres, across different languages, um, different like romance, drama, thrillers, like everything that Indians actually consume. And the way, rather than, so we've seen at one end Spotify saying, hey, 7 rupees. The way that Pocket FM they kind of did it is they said you just need to pay 5 rupees to unlock the next episode. Okay, so you do not feel the guilt. There's no monthly commitment. And only they leave you at a cliffhanger, and they'll say, hey, pay 5 rupees if you feel like this is worth the thing. So, and this is that sweet spot that your content is that there that you can charge 5 rupees. And finally, like I said, in case of Spotify, they realized it was culture. In case of Pocket FM, they also realized it's culture. So they said, hey, can we build family dramas? Can we build romance and everything? And that is the thing. 70% of their actually revenue now comes from international markets. And these are people who are looking for local content in their local markets and want a piece of their home, right? So just being able to understand the positioning, like I said in the beginning,
Right.
positioning, what is your differentiator? And then finally, the pricing to that market
Yeah.
is where you make all the difference.
Yeah, no, I think thank you. Those were some really, like two products in a slightly similar space, but very different approaches. So that was literally like a mini case study comparison that we can take back to the consumers.
I love case studies. I feel like I get my best learnings from them, and I'm like, that's my way of sharing examples.
Yeah, no, thank you, Deeksha. That was very, very insightful. And I love the part that you approach pretty much all the questions, all the conversations around one or the other example. That makes it easy for folks to, like just internalize it and remember.
See, Mati, this is why you have to be a storyteller to be a PM.
I agree.
So
Completely.
if you, yeah, I mean, if you can't tell them, I mean, I could have gone and say, hey, thing one, thing two, thing three, but how is it that I can communicate the same thing to you by telling you a story of how someone else is doing it and something that you use or have seen someone using, and so you can connect immediately with it. And that for us is one of my final lessons for you.
Yeah, yeah. So storytelling is a very, very integral part of a PMM. You have demonstrated that extremely well.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Deeksha, for your time. It was wonderful chatting with you. And I'm sure there are such a lovely takeaways and nuggets of wisdom here for the listeners.
Thank you, Malti, and I hope to see you in person sometime soon.
Hopefully, we shall.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
HSB integrates timeless leadership principles with a cutting edge curriculum to give graduates an edge in the market. Through partnerships with companies and academic institutions within India and abroad, HSB graduates have boundless opportunities worldwide.